Sicily, the largest island in the Mediterranean. What has not happened here? The Vikings came here with their bloody axes. Arabs ruled for hundreds of years. Turkish pirates were always there. The first mafia appeared in Sicily. It is a completely different world with its unusual cults, scary catacombs where people talk to mummies, interesting cities, beaches, and colorful people. Located in the center of the Mediterranean Sea, Sicily is an autonomous region of Italy with a population of 5 million. And its capital is Palermo. Before touring the streets of Sicily, one of the most popular tourist destinations in Europe, let's get to know Sicilians. Although the island is part of Italy, Italians look at them with disdain as Arabesque Greeks under Spanish influence, because they see them as ultra-conservative, rude, uneducated, and lying people. It is true that Sicilians are one of the most conservative people in all of Europe. For example, look, this is the Square of Shame, as the Sicilians call it, because of the naked statues on it, which were originally built for Florence and then brought to the capital Palermo for various reasons. The local people, who are disturbed by the nudity of these statues, call the square where the fountain is located Shame Square. Sicilians are almost the most sluggish people in Europe, so much so that everything on the island is slow, even very slow. Even if they will earn money from you, if they think they will get tired, believe me, they may say, "Keep your money." Even lunch breaks are 3 hours long, and life on the island literally stops during this period. People spend this time either sleeping or eating at home with their families. So much so that it is almost impossible to find an open restaurant or a store where you can shop during this 3-hour siesta. Mount Etna is the island's cultural symbol. But some people think this symbol should be replaced by the old uncles who sit in the city centers and neighborhoods all day long. They wear hats and baggy trousers and watch the surroundings. You see them in all towns and cities. They have taken it upon themselves to warn tourists who behave against the local culture. I think it is possible to see these uncles in almost all Mediterranean countries. This is Palermo, the capital of the island. Every city and even every town in the country has its own history and interesting stories. One of the most extraordinary of these lies in the depths of Palermo, Capuchin Catacombs. If you are afraid of corpses, you can skip this section. Catacomb is a cemetery underground, but it is different from other cemeteries because Capuchin monks, a kind of order, have been buried there since 1599. Later, ordinary people also started to be buried mummified as a sign of status. I said buried. Sorry, I made a mistake. The corpses are dressed in everyday clothes, mummified and displayed in glass cabinets, and relatives of the deceased come on religious days to hold hands with the dead and talk to them. Some are placed in poses. For example, 2 children sitting side by side in a rocking chair. I can't put a photo of it here due to community standards, but the mummification technique they used was so successful that a little child named Rosalia Lombardo, who was placed in the catacombs in 1920, has not lost any of her original appearance even after 62 years. The care and preservation of the mummies in the Capuchin catacombs is made possible by donations from the families of the deceased. In addition, the name cappuccino, a type of coffee, comes from the Capuchin priests due to the similarity of the clothes they wear. You are now seeing one of the most important symbols of Sicily, the Massimo Theater in Palermo. It is the 3rd largest opera and theater hall in Europe and the largest in Italy, and has a magnificent architecture. Dedicated to King Victor Emmanuel, the theater was completed in 1897 and became famous when the final scene of the Godfather series was filmed here. Speaking of the Godfather, do you want to see how a film can change the fate of a small town? This is the town of Savoca. Although it is small and secluded, It is now flooded with tourists because several scenes of the Godfather film were shot here. Many of you will recognize this scene, which is exactly what you are seeing right now. You may have noticed that the buildings and houses in Sicily are old and dilapidated. This is because many of the buildings on the island have been in use almost since the Middle Ages. People have been living in family houses for hundreds of years. That's why the houses are both very small and old. The cities are so well preserved that if a Sicilian who lived 300 years ago were born again, he could find his home without losing his way. Due to poverty, wars, and mafia pressure, the islanders migrated out of the country at a great rate, which prevented the population growth of the island and reduced the need for new houses. For this reason, the texture of the cities has been preserved intact. The migration out of the island is so great that 10 million Sicilians are thought to live in other countries, even though the island population is 5 million. In some towns, empty houses are being sold for €1 in order to revitalize the population that has declined due to emigration. That is right, mates, it is really €1. The only condition is that the interior of the house must be renovated within 3 years. In order not to spoil the texture, it is completely forbidden to change the exterior. But don't get too excited because the European Union and American citizens are prioritized in sales, and they have already bought most of them. Although Sicily's economy has recovered over the last 20 years thanks to European Union funding and support and has become a tourist destination, poverty is still visible on the island. Of course, what I mean by poverty here is not hunger and misery, because their purchasing power is strong and their basic needs, such as food, are quite affordable. For example, a worker earning the lowest wage earns a monthly income of between 1,500 to 1,800 euros on average. I guess this is not so bad compared to other poor countries. Since food prices are cheap, they generally have a sustainable standard of living. Sicilians are very lucky people in this regard. Almost no hormones and additives are used in food products. So much so that public food forests are established on the island. For the last 5 years, huge areas of land have been transformed into forests where people can freely enter and harvest their fruit and vegetables. This is a project developed for both wild animals and people to have easier access to natural food. The result? The average human life expectancy on the island is 82 years. Of course, we should not forget the contribution of olive oil to the long life of the islanders. There is always some kind of olive oil in every meal, and Italy is the biggest olive oil producer in the world after Spain. We have already mentioned that there are economic problems on the island, but this is not only an issue of today. It is the result of hundreds of years of exclusion, mafia, and corruption. Sicilians have always had a hard and challenging life. In fact, it was here that the mafia first appeared in the world. The island has been under the rule of various states such as Rome in 242 BC, Arabs in 827, Norman Vikings in 1091, Spaniards in 1412, Austrians in 1713, and Italy in 1860. Therefore, it has its own unique culture. And it was precisely because of this difference in culture and way of life that Italy never fully invested heavily in Sicily, never brought justice to the island, and never established authority there. For many years, the population had to live in a balance between the overlords and local criminals. The island was exploited so much by the invaders that it eventually gave rise to the Sicilian culture, which places great importance on the concept of family and never trusts foreigners. The occupying states were not the only problem of the islanders. Due to its location as a bridge between Europe and Africa, it had always been a target for pirates. You may have heard of Archimedes, the famous Greek mathematician who discovered the buoyancy of water. Archimedes was born in Sicily in 287 BC and spent most of his life on the island. In recent history, World War II had a profound impact on the island. In 1945 and 1946, a strong separatist movement campaigned for Sicily to be recognized as the 49th state of the United States, ahead of Alaska and Hawaii. To appease this movement, the Italian government granted Sicily a special status, and Sicily was declared an autonomous region of Italy in 1946. So, how did all these situations lead to the world's first mafia organizations in Sicily? Let's go back a little to understand this situation. In 1871, the north and south of Italy joined together and Sicily became part of Italy. In those years, large landowners in Sicily had the power to rule without recognizing the rules. This power in the hands of the landlords and their ruthless behavior led to a balance between them and the gangs in the region. In fact, what both the gangsters and the landlords were doing was a war to share the resources of the people. People who felt that they had been wronged by the landlord took refuge with the gangs, and those who wanted to be protected from the gangs took refuge with the landlords and tried to ensure their own security in return for certain prices, such as tribute. These groups aimed to dominate their areas by buying off the police and state institutions and by being more ruthless than the others. In Sicily, where the state was already neglected, illegal forces became an alternative to the state. Eventually, the world's first organized and state-cooperative criminal organizations emerged in Sicily in the 1870s. According to estimates, the word mafia was formerly the name given to fighters resisting the occupiers, but is now the name of armed, illegal groups that are an alternative to the state. The rules of the system were very clear. Did something happen to you? Then you go to the mafia, not the police. You pay your taxes to the mafia, not to the state. And you will never talk about anything you see or hear about the mafia. In Sicily, the mafia's code of silence was so effective that it was not until the early 2000s that the Italian state was able to break the power of the Sicilian Mafia. A name I will tell you shows exactly how effective this silence is. Matteo Messina Denaro. Born in 1962, Messina Denaro was the boss of a group called Young Turks, inspired by the Joan Turks, the innovative officers of the Ottoman Empire, and had been wanted for 30 years. In 2010, according to Forbes magazine, he was one of the 10 most wanted and powerful criminals in the world. For such a man to hide for 30 years, you would expect him to flee to one of the secluded countries of the world, wouldn't you? But no. On the 26th of January 2023, he was captured in Palermo, the capital of Sicily. He had been on the island for 30 years and was undergoing chemotherapy for colon cancer when he was caught leaving a private hospital in Palermo. He died a few months later as a result of his illness. For 30 years, no one had the courage to denounce him. It was his illness that got him caught. Known to have 900 armed men, those who knew Messina Denaro say he boasted, "I filled a whole cemetery all by myself." Today in Sicily, it is still frowned upon to talk about the mafia. If you make a joke about the mafia to people on the street, most of them will sulk and look away. People are really uncomfortable with being referred to in this way, and in many parts of Sicily, you can see signs saying, "There is no mafia here." Even at the entrance of Corleone, one of the towns where the Godfather film was set, there is a sign saying, "Corleone, capital of all things legal." Let's leave these dark matters and move on to more pleasant topics. Almost nobody speaks English in Sicily. If you go as a tourist, I can say that you will have a very difficult time in this regard. When you speak English to people, they do not understand and try to answer you in Italian. They are also really bad at driving. They don't even bother to change lanes when overtaking. The cars used by the locals are usually small and cute. Since the city centers are small, there are cute, colorful, and old cars everywhere. Due to the narrow streets, motorbikes are also very common, and they can scold you by honking their horns and driving on you. Every tourist who goes to Sicily will surely experience this. However, this is not because they are aggressive towards strangers, but because they are too natural. You may feel like you are in your own country when you see clothes hung to dry in the windows of houses and alleyways, and old Sicilian women sitting on doorsteps gossiping with each other. However, beware of theft cases that are more frequent than in other European countries. According to a study conducted in 2023, Italy was the country in Europe where foreign and domestic tourists were most exposed to pickpocketing incidents. France is in second place, and the Netherlands is in third place. You should also keep an eye out for shopping. For example, the easiest way to travel around the island is to rent a car. And let's say you rent a car. If you do not have the right insurance and do not check the vehicle well, some companies will try to charge you even for old damages on the vehicle. This has been recorded many times. According to some people, Sicilian women are really dangerous, so never cheat on a Sicilian woman. This is a trinket called testa di moro by the locals, and its story is as follows. In the 1000s, an Arab and a Sicilian girl fall in love. However, what the Sicilian girl does not know is that the Arab young man she is in love with has a wife and children in his country. The young girl, who is very angry at this situation, cuts off her lover's head on the last night they spend together, puts it in a flower pot, and plants basil on top so that it does not smell. The interesting image that emerged as a result of this incident has become one of the most important symbols of today's Sicily. So let me give you an advice: never lie to a Sicilian woman. The island is also a popular destination for traveling boat owners. In Sicily, which is surrounded by wide and beautiful beaches on all four sides, the doors of the houses in some towns open directly to the beach. There are even towns where the waves hit the walls of the houses from time to time. If someone tries to leave the beach and go to the supermarket wearing a bikini, an elderly local will definitely warn him to dress more appropriately. In fact, until a few generations ago, women were frowned upon even working. They were only expected to cook good food, look after children, and run the household. By the way, while we are talking about Sicily, it is impossible not to visit Catania. This is the second largest city of Sicily and has a very historical texture. However, what makes the city famous is a dangerous force next to it, Mount Etna. Etna volcano, known as the most active volcano in today's Europe, has erupted many times throughout history, almost 17 times, bringing its surroundings to the state of extinction. But people could not stop themselves from settling around it because the volcanic soil is very fertile in agricultural terms. Catania has a blackish color due to the volcanic soil of Etna volcano. Throughout the history, earthquakes caused by the volcano have devastated the city of Catania many times, and perhaps for the first time in history, a period of civil unrest, which we can call contractor wars, was experienced in Catania. In the struggle to rebuild the destroyed city, developers literally ate each other in order to have more building space. Today, tours to Mount Etna are organized, and people have the chance to see the lava of an active volcano up close. It is definitely one of the most enjoyable activities in Sicily, and also because of its imposing stance and the lasting traces it has left on the island life, this big and powerful mountain is the cultural symbol of Sicily. Yes, friends, We got to know Sicily and the life here together, with its authentic cities, traditional structures, full culture, and too many stories of each town to finish telling. I hope you enjoyed exploring the mysteries of this incredible island. I don't know if you've ever been to Sicily, or is it on your bucket list? Please share your thoughts in the comments. And don't miss my previous video in which I revealed the secrets of Uzbekistan in Central Asia. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep exploring, stay curious, and we will see you in the next adventure.